So now we're going to talk about how you master the superpower. So OAD is a sophisticated and complex instrument. Hands up, who wants to learn a complicated and sophisticated instrument? Very few people, right? So what we've done is we've created what's called the OAD Leadership Style Matrix. And that allows us to break down the outputs into a kind of a standard business 2x2. So in OAD, if you can see the mouse here, there's the first two cuts are really important: generalist or specialist. We like to say a generalist and a specialist role is a recipe for failure, and vice versa. So that's a really important cut. The horizontal cut is we call it style or communication style. So it's socially oriented or technically oriented, and that creates the 2x2. So I am a socially oriented generalist in the builder quadrant negotiator, right? We have a bunch of them. That seems the one that comes up often. Will is a technically oriented generalist in the architect quadrant as a developer. Now, it's not like Will is so technical he can't do PowerPoint. He can't, but it's not like he intrinsically can't. And it's not like I can't rock a spreadsheet. I can, but I'm much more, in my own space when I'm doing stuff like this, is talking. So we're going to show where everybody has plotted out on this, and then we'll get into the details. Okay, so OAD has 7 constructs. We call them relative traits, and relative traits means each construct will have a numeric score, but the numeric score is not as important as each point is relative to each other. And those relative points is how you get onto the 2x2. So we'll show you that. The next is 3 other, we call these trait modifiers. And trait modifiers, we think is one of the benefits of OAD because it modifies these four constructs, which is kind of you telling us who you are. So versatility level is really important. That is a measure of behavioral adaptability. How much can a person act outside of their traits and for how long? Somebody with a high score can do it easier and longer. Somebody with a low score can do it not as easily and not as long. Emotional control is a decision-making measure. We like to think of it as heart versus head. So somebody with a low score makes their decisions using a lot of empathy and feeling. Somebody with a high score is more logic-minded. It does not mean they are not empathetic people. It just means when they make their decisions, it's more logical. And creativity is a measure of how a person comes up with a business solution. Somebody with a lower score is going to look at the manual, watch the training video. Somebody with a higher score is going to be somebody who says, hey, I'll look at the conventional way, but if it's not working for me, I'm going to come up with my own solution. So I like to kid around and say, we all want our airline mechanics to be high patience, high detail orientation, and low creativity. We don't want them making stuff up as they go along. Okay, so now this is how we read this, and we're trying to move quick. So this is what's coming is an age-related gag, and so not everybody gets it. Carol's not sure I should do this, but I'll just put this up. Who here knows who this person is? Julie McCoy from The Love Boat. Everybody remember her? No one? Okay. Julie, she was right. Julie's job is the social director on The Love Boat. Her job is to make sure everybody has a great trip. So if she took the OAD assessment, what might her look like? So this box thing that you see is how everyone's scores, everyone's results constructs come out. So I'll walk you through this so you can kind of see the real life thing. So what we know about Julie, let's do it this way. She is in the quadrant facilitator, and she's a coordinator. So if you remember the 2x2, she is in the bottom green. She is a socially oriented specialist. What do we know about her? Well, she's very extroverted. She's open, she's social, she's optimistic, she's warm. You meet her, everyone feels like they're glad to be around her. Then we also notice, though, she's carrying a clipboard, and that's her detail orientation. She knows everything about the ship. She knows the schedule. She knows where everyone's workers are supposed to be. She knows everyone's cabin. So she's very detail oriented. But if you look her in the eye, she might get a little shy, because that's her assertiveness is on the lower end. And then P for patience is one of my favorite things to look at, because not only is it a measure of how much urgency or patience a person has, it is a measure of how much or how comfortable they are with change. And in our crazy business world, change is one of the only constants. So one of the things we talk about in our consulting is when your company is going through a change mechanism, you got to find the folks who have that higher P, meaning that they are not comfortable with change, and you have to figure out how to communicate with them, because what you may see as resistance to change is them just structurally not being able to grasp it. So helping them move along will actually break through the resistance. So that's Julie. And then I'll just say real quick, we won't really touch a lot of this, but her VL is a 31, average is 30. So she has an average ability to act outside of her character. And I'll show you what that looks like. Her EC, heart versus head, is a 5. That's the average. So she's a mix of heart and head when making decisions. And her CR is a 7. That means that she'll look at conventional thinking to solve a problem, but she's not going to spend all day there. So she'll come up with her own if she has to. Okay. So this is how the 2x2 works. So remember I mentioned that these were relative. So the relative pairs are A versus D. If the A is greater than the D, they're a generalist. If the D is greater than the A, they're a specialist. Then we look at E and D. If E is greater than D, they're socially oriented. And if D is greater than E, they're technically oriented. So my A and E are greater than my D. I'm up here. Will's A is greater than his D, but his D is greater than his E. Say that 3 times fast. So he is an architect. And then Julie, her D is greater than her A. She's a specialist, but her E is greater than her D. So she is social. So that's how you get on to the grid. And then P and A don't show up in the 2x2, but they are paired together. So if P is to the left of A, that's somebody who is very urgent and comfortable with change, and vice versa. Okay, this is really the last slide before we get into it. So I mentioned that Julie can change her behavior. So everyone who took this assessment knows you take it the first time, you think about yourself, and you take it the second time, you think about your job. And so when we look at this, we look at the VLs to see are they aligned. Julie's are. But then we look and we notice her patterns are sort of the same, but her A is moved from subordinate to dominant. So Julie realizes to do her job, she has to be a little bit more assertive. So she can do that. She can't do it forever, but she shows that she can do that. Okay. So this is why this is important. So I already did this earlier. We improve communication, reduce conflict, accelerate success. Then I'll get through this. So some folks can feel that generalists are careless and freewheeling. And some folks can feel that specialists are rigid or controlling or too in the weeds. Some folks think that social people are time wasters because they're always gabbing and talking. And others feel that people on the left, on the technical side, like our friend Will, are sort of brusque and abrupt and intimidating, right? You put that all together in a group setting. If folks don't understand each other, you kind of have this Tower of Babel. So we like to say that conflict begins at context before content even begins. So if I'm a seller, I'm a persuader, I have ideas I want to share. People on Will's side are like, I hate being sold, and I'm not so sure I like ideas. So, so if I'm coming at, and they hate being sold, so if I coming at him with all this stuff, he's just going to sit like this. And the conflict is going to come up, not because he doesn't necessarily agree with my idea. He just doesn't like that I keep badgering him and selling him. And so if we can help everybody in a group understand how they communicate and like to consume information, we can accomplish the 3 goals that are setting up there.